Right. So we're diving deep into climate change today, but with a twist,
Okay.
one you might not have considered before.
All right. I'm intrigued.
What if everything we've done to the planet since like the Industrial Revolution
Yeah.
is basically one giant terraforming project?
Mm-hmm.
Unintentional, sure,
Right.
but terraforming nonetheless.
Okay. Like where this is going.
Like usually when we think terraforming,
Yeah.
it's all about making Mars more Earth-like, right?
Right. Exactly. Tweaking a planet's atmosphere, temperature,
Yeah.
creating whole ecosystems from scratch.
Exactly. So let's flip the script.
Okay.
Instead of looking outward to other planets,
Yeah.
let's look back at our own.
Okay.
Are we, without fully realizing it, terraforming Earth as we go?
Well, the idea that humans are reshaping the planet isn't exactly new.
Right.
I mean, we've been modifying our environment for millennia.
Uh-huh.
Think about ancient civilizations
Sure.
building irrigation systems or using controlled burns to manage land.
Yeah, for sure.
But the difference now is
Yeah.
the scale.
Yeah.
We're operating at a global scale
Oh, yeah.
with unprecedented power and speed.
That's where the Anthropocene comes in, right?
Exactly.
This whole idea that we've entered a new geological epoch
Mhm.
where human activity is the dominant force shaping the planet.
Precisely. It's not just about localized impacts anymore.
Yeah.
It's about altering Earth systems
Oh, wow.
on a fundamental level.
Okay, so we've been tinkering with Earth systems for ages.
Yeah.
But where does this idea of accidental terraforming come in?
Right.
Is it just about the scale of our impasse, or is there something more to it?
Let's take the example of fossil fuels.
Okay.
We've known for decades that burning them releases carbon dioxide
Right.
into the atmosphere, contributing to the greenhouse effect and global warming.
Of course.
Yet, despite that knowledge,
Yeah.
we've continued to rely heavily on fossil fuels for energy.
It's like when you know you shouldn't eat that extra slice of cake,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
but you do it anyway.
Oh, for sure.
You know, it's not good for you in the long run,
Right.
but it's just so tempting in the moment.
That's a good analogy.
Yeah.
And in the case of fossil fuels,
Yeah.
the temptation has been the immense economic growth and technological advancements they've enabled.
For sure.
But it raises a fascinating question.
Okay, what's that?
Was our continued reliance on fossil fuels entirely accidental?
Mm.
Or was there a subconscious element of, well, if it warms things up a bit, maybe that's not such a bad thing?
Whoa.
Yeah.
So you're saying we might have been low-key trying to terraform the planet?
Potentially.
Yeah. To suit our needs, even if we weren't fully conscious of it.
It's a provocative thought, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
I'm not saying that anyone set out with a plan to drastically alter the Earth's climate,
Right.
but it does force us to consider
Okay.
the complex interplay between human desires,
Yeah.
technological advancements,
Yeah.
and unintended consequences.
Wow, that's a lot to think about.
Yeah, it is.
So that brings us to another head scratcher,
What's that?
geoengineering.
Joe?
This idea of intentionally manipulating Earth's systems
Mm-hmm.
to counteract climate change sounds like something straight out of a sci-fi movie.
It does a bit, yeah.
But it's a real thing that scientists are seriously considering, right?
Yes, geoengineering encompasses a range of proposed techniques
Uh-huh.
aimed at deliberately modifying Earth's climate.
So like what? What kind of things?
Well, some focus on reducing the amount of sunlight reaching the Earth's surface.
Okay.
For example, by injecting reflective particles into the stratosphere.
Oh, okay.
Others focus on removing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere,
Got it.
either through natural processes like reforestation
Right.
or technological solutions like direct air capture.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah.
But here's where things get even more blurry for me.
Okay, how so?
Are we already doing a form of accidental geoengineering right now?
Hmm.
I mean, all the pollution we pump into the atmosphere,
Yeah.
isn't that also messing with the climate?
You're hitting on a crucial point. Some experts argue that our current industrial practices,
Right.
with their massive emissions of greenhouse gases and
Right.
other pollutants,
Right.
are effectively a form of inadvertent geoengineering.
Really?
Yes, we're already altering the planet's climate, just not in a controlled or deliberate way.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's,
It's a lot to consider.
it really is.
Yeah. You know, it's like we've been driving this massive planetary machine
Mhm.
without a full understanding of the controls.
Right.
Or the potential hazards.
It's giving major sci-fi movie vibes.
Oh, how so?
Like where someone accidentally activates a doomsday device.
Okay, I see it.
They push a button without fully grasping the consequences,
Right.
and suddenly the whole planet's in jeopardy.
Yeah.
But in this case, the button has been our pursuit of progress
Yeah.
and economic growth.
Exactly.
Yep.
And while we can't turn back time or
Yeah.
undo the changes we've already made,
Right.
I think it's crucial to at least acknowledge the potential downsides
Okay.
of our accidental terraforming.
Yeah, for sure.
We've touched on the environmental impacts,
Right.
but there are also profound social, political, and ethical dimensions to consider.
Okay, so let's start with the social and political side of things.
Right.
Climate change isn't just an abstract environmental issue.
Right.
It has very real consequences for people and communities around the world.
Absolutely.
You mentioned earlier that it exacerbates existing inequalities.
Yes.
Can you give us like a concrete example of what that looks like on the ground?
Imagine a coastal community in a low-lying island nation.
Okay.
Rising sea levels driven by climate change
Yeah.
are gradually encroaching on their homes and livelihoods.
Oh, wow.
Saltwater intrusion contaminates their freshwater sources,
That's awful.
making it harder to grow crops or access clean drinking water. And storms become more frequent and intense,
Oh, no.
causing widespread damage and displacement.
That's terrible.
This community, already vulnerable due to its geographical location
Yeah.
and limited resources, faces an existential threat,
Right.
amplified by climate change.
Wow. That's, it's heartbreaking to think that the people who have contributed the least to climate change
Yeah.
are often the ones bearing the brunt of its impacts.
I know it's a massive injustice on a global scale.
It really is.
It raises questions about fairness and responsibility.
For sure.
The nations that have benefited the most from industrialization and fossil fuel consumption
Yeah.
have a moral obligation to assist those most affected by the consequences.
I completely agree.
Yeah,
But even beyond those direct impacts,
Right.
there's a whole web of interconnected issues.
absolutely.
I read somewhere that climate change can contribute to political instability
Yes,
and even conflict.
it's true.
How does that play out?
Think about resources like water and arable land.
Okay.
As climate change disrupts weather patterns
Yes.
and alters agricultural yields,
Uh-huh.
competition for these essential resources intensifies,
Right.
particularly in regions already facing scarcity.
That makes sense.
This can exacerbate existing tensions
Oh, wow.
between communities or nations,
Yeah.
potentially leading to conflict and displacement.
So climate change isn't just an environmental challenge.
No, it's not.
It's a security challenge.
Yeah,
A
yeah.
humanitarian challenge.
Absolutely.
And a challenge to our very sense of global justice.
It truly is a multifaceted crisis
Wow.
that demands a comprehensive and coordinated response.
Okay, let's switch gears for a moment and talk about technology.
All right.
Earlier, we touched on the idea of geoengineering,
Right.
intentionally manipulating Earth systems to combat climate change.
Yes.
And we discussed how our current industrial activities might be a form of accidental geoengineering.
Exactly.
But where do we go from here?
Right.
Is intentional geoengineering a viable solution? Or are we just opening Pandora's box?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
And there's no easy answer.
Right.
Geoengineering in its various forms
Yeah.
presents both potential benefits and significant risks. On one hand,
Yeah.
it offers the possibility of mitigating some of the worst effects of climate change,
Okay.
buying us time to transition to a more sustainable way of life.
So it's almost like a last-ditch effort.
In a way.
Like we messed up so badly
Yeah.
that we need to resort to drastic measures to save ourselves?
There's certainly an element of that,
Right.
but we have to be incredibly cautious.
Oh, absolutely.
Geoengineering involves tinkering with complex Earth systems that we
Yeah.
don't fully understand.
Of course.
The potential for unintended consequences is enormous.
Could you give us an example
Yes, sir.
of what kind of unintended consequences we might be talking about?
Let's take solar radiation management.
Okay.
The idea of injecting reflective particles into the stratosphere
Uh-huh.
to reduce incoming sunlight,
Okay.
while it might cool the planet overall,
Yeah.
it could also disrupt regional weather patterns,
Oh, no.
potentially leading to droughts in some areas
Right.
and floods in others.
It's like trying to fix a leaky faucet
Okay.
by smashing the entire plumbing system with a hammer.
I like that analogy.
Thanks.
You might stop the leak,
Yeah,
but you've created a whole host of new problems in the process.
exactly.
It captures the essence of the dilemma.
Right.
Geoengineering is a high-stakes gamble
Uh-huh.
with potentially planet-altering consequences.
And who gets to decide whether we take that gamble?
That's a great question.
I mean, we're talking about interventions that would affect the entire planet.
I know.
Shouldn't there be some kind of global consensus?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The ethical and geopolitical implications of geoengineering are profound.
Right.
Who has the authority to deploy these technologies?
Yeah.
Who bears responsibility for any negative
A
consequences?
lot of responsibility.
These are questions that require careful consideration and international dialogue.
For sure.
We can't just have a handful of powerful nations or corporations
Right.
making decisions that affect the fate of the entire planet.
It all boils down to this. Are we willing to trust ourselves with the power to intentionally manipulate Earth's climate?
That's the question, isn't it?
Has we learned enough from our accidental terraforming experiment
Yeah.
to wield that power responsibly?
Good question.
Or are we just setting ourselves up for an even bigger disaster?
I don't know.
Okay, so we're back for the final part of our deep dive. And, it's easy to get lost in all this, like, theoretical stuff.
Right.
But I think it's time we brought things back down to Earth, literally.
Okay.
What
Yeah.
are we seeing happening to the planet right now?
Well, we're witnessing a cascade of effects.
Okay.
Across the globe, the most obvious is the rising global temperature,
Yeah.
leading to those more frequent and intense heat waves.
Right, and I've heard about the melting glaciers and ice caps. And it's not just about losing those incredible natural wonders, is it?
No, definitely not. There's a much bigger picture here.
Okay, so what else is going on?
So that melting ice contributes to rising sea levels, which of course threatens coastal communities and ecosystems worldwide.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
But there's also this ripple effect on ocean currents and weather patterns.
What do you mean?
Well, the influx of fresh water from those melting glaciers
Yeah.
can alter the delicate balance of salinity and temperature
Okay.
that drives ocean currents,
Got it.
leading to shifts in weather patterns across the globe.
So we're talking about like a domino effect.
Yeah, exactly.
One change triggers this whole chain reaction.
Right.
Across the planet, it's like we're pulling on a loose thread in this giant tapestry, and the whole thing starts to unravel.
That's a powerful analogy.
What thing?
And it highlights the interconnectedness of Earth's systems.
Yeah.
We can't just isolate climate change as a separate issue.
Right.
It's woven into the very fabric of our planet.
What about the impact on wildlife?
Oh, yeah, that's another huge concern.
It feels like we're losing biodiversity at an alarming rate.
Unfortunately, that's true.
Yeah.
We're seeing mass coral bleaching events as ocean temperatures rise,
Right.
shifts in animal migration patterns as habitats change,
Jeez.
and even extinctions as species struggle to adapt to those rapidly changing conditions.
It's awful.
And the loss of biodiversity weakens ecosystems
Of course.
and disrupts the essential services they provide.
Yeah, like what kind of services?
Everything from pollination to water purification.
Wow. So we've talked about all these problems.
Right.
The unintended consequences of our accidental terraforming. But what about solutions?
Okay, well,
Is there any way to reverse course, to steer the planet towards a more sustainable future?
there's no single magic bullet, unfortunately.
Right.
But there are many things we can do, both
Yeah.
individually and collectively.
Like what?
Well, on a personal level,
Yeah.
we can make more conscious choices about our consumption habits, reduce our reliance on fossil fuels,
Okay.
and support sustainable practices.
Yeah, I've heard a lot about reducing our carbon footprint. But sometimes it feels like such a small action
Yeah, I get that.
in the face of this massive global problem. Does it really make a difference?
Every little bit helps.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Think of it as a collective effort. If millions of people make small changes in their daily lives,
Yeah.
it can add up to a significant impact.
That's good to hear.
And beyond individual actions, we need systemic change.
What do you mean?
We need governments and industries
Okay.
to implement policies and invest in technologies
Yeah.
that promote sustainability and reduce greenhouse gas emissions.
So it's like transitioning to renewable energy sources,
Yes, exactly.
investing in public transportation,
Yeah,
promoting energy efficiency,
right.
and protecting forests.
Absolutely. We need to shift away from fossil fuels
Yeah.
and towards a more circular economy
Okay.
that prioritizes reuse, recycling, and reducing waste.
But that requires a massive shift in our priorities,
It does.
both economically and politically. How do we make that happen?
It requires a combination of political will,
Go.
technological innovation,
Mm-hmm.
and social mobilization.
So what does that look like in practice?
We need leaders who are committed to addressing climate change,
All right.
businesses that are willing to invest in sustainable practices,
Uh-huh.
and citizens who are engaged and demanding change.
It sounds like a daunting task.
It is.
But I also feel this, like, glimmer of hope.
Me too.
If we've been able to accidentally terraform the planet,
Yeah.
maybe we can intentionally steer it in a better direction.
I agree. The same ingenuity and drive that led us to this point can be harnessed to create a more sustainable future.
I like that.
It won't be easy,
Right?
but it's essential for the well-being of our planet
Of course.
and future generations.
Well, this deep dive has been a real eye-opener for me.
Yeah, me too.
We started by asking if we're accidentally terraforming Earth.
Right.
And it turns out the answer is far more complex
Yeah.
than a simple yes or no. We've explored the unintended consequences of our actions, the interconnectedness of Earth systems,
Right.
and the daunting challenges we face.
We have.
But we've also glimpsed the possibility of a different future,
Yeah.
one where we intentionally steer our planet towards a path of sustainability and resilience.
Absolutely.
The choice is ours to make.
The future of Earth is in our hands. Let's use that power wisely.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
And remember, even small actions can make a difference. Let's all do our part to ensure that the story of our planet has a happy ending.